Good evening and welcome back to blackdoctor.org. Tonight we are talking about clinical trials and what the clinical trials in Black folks and what we need to know about them. So, first, housekeeping as always, please share the broadcast, share wherever you're watching from. Make sure you share it because somebody needs this information and they need to spread it to someone or they themselves need to go and participate in clinical trials. Healthy people can participate as well. You'll learn that tonight as well. And also, as always, please let us know where you're watching from. Just type it in the comments. And if you have any questions, type them in the comments and we will try to get those addressed for you as well. So tonight, I'm really excited to be joined by Dr. Pierre Theodore and Judy Lee. And then we have somebody else who must have had to pop off for a second. But I'm sure she will be right back, Ricky Fairley. But we'll start with you. Pierre, please let everyone know just briefly what you do with Genentech Roche.
Hey, fantastic. And first of all, Dr. Renee, let me just say a hearty welcome to all of our listeners and my appreciation to you for inviting Judy and I to discuss issues related to clinical trials with you tonight. It's really a pleasure to be with you and your audience today. My name is Pierre Theodore, and by way of background, I'm a clinician, first and foremost. I trained as a general surgeon and practiced cardiothoracic surgery for many years in an academic setting, and I was on the faculty at UCSF in San Francisco before turning my attention to industry and working on developing drugs and diagnostics and medical devices. And then I took a particular interest in what are the structural barriers that many patients face, and then was recruited over to Genentech a couple of years ago to lead up the program in health equity and patient inclusion, which simply put is to develop an understanding of the barriers that are faced by patients either to our pipeline of products that are coming through the development process to become products, and then our current portfolio, which are the products that are marketed at present in the medical marketplace. So that's my role, is to understand those barriers and to pull them down so that there are greater access for patients to our pipeline and portfolio of products.
And Judy?
Hi, I am Judy Lee, and I am a trial and compassionate use line lead for Genentech. And again, I'm honored to be here with Dr. Theodore and Dr. Renee and meeting Ricky. I am just flattered that you guys invited me to talk a little about our service that we have at Genentech for patients. A little bit background, I've been doing, clinical trials now for 28 years. I went, and even in college, I started at Kaiser Hospital doing research and heavily involved in diversity trials. And back then it was very different. Everything was paper written, and we're trying to figure out how can we recruit and have more diversity in our trials even back then. And it was very tough. So I worked on women's health. I worked on Asian, Latina, African American studies, trying to recruit them. And then went to Genentech 20 years ago, and I managed, again, Genentech and Roche's trial line, where the public, like patients, caretakers, and healthcare professionals, they could call our trial line at any time, and we have nurses during business hours to answer any of their questions about our trials. And end of the day, what we're trying to achieve at the trial line is, even if we don't have to answer or we don't have a trial for you, any questions, we want to make sure that we could find an answer for you. And in the day that we make sure we looked under every rock for you as a patient and to get what you need, even if maybe not a trial, maybe it could be a question that we can help you escalate your question somewhere and help you. So that's our mission at the trial line. So glad to be here.
Thank you. And Ricky?
Hi, I'm Ricky Fairley, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. I'm a 12-year survivor of triple-negative breast cancer. So this is my God job, and we are about advancing the science for breast cancer because the mortality rates for Black women are crazy, and the state of our disease right now is just unacceptable. And we need more science. We need more clinical trials. We need more Black bodies in research to get the drugs that we need to stay healthy. So I love you guys' titles. You know, when I work with Genentech, oh my gosh, since I had first recovered. I love your titles. They're very cool.
Thank you.
So let's start with you, Pierre. What are clinical trials?
Hey, thanks, Renee. And what a great place to start, to really just take a step back and ask ourselves, what do we mean by the term trial, which is in a way a strange term to use. And the way I think about it, maybe I think about it from a physician's perspective and a patient's perspective, think of all of the products that are around us, everything from a tongue depressor to a robot that might be used by a surgeon to a chemotherapy agent or an advanced therapeutic that might be used for a disease. And there are really two questions that we always need to ask ourselves about anything that touches a patient to in some way modify, improve, or cure disease. And those two questions are, is that product safe? And does that product work? And the way that we fundamentally get at those two primary questions, is it safe for all patients? And does it work effectively to treat disease, is through clinical research. And one form of clinical research are what we call trials, which is where we compare one manner of treating patients versus another, and we ask ourselves how the outcomes vary, and how can that benefit both the patients in the trial and also the greater population of patients that eventually will receive that therapeutic. So in some ways, the best way I can think of what is a clinical trial is it is the mechanism that allows us to understand the safety and the efficacy, that is, how well does it work and how safe is it for all patients, for all of the drugs and the treatments and the diagnostics that we use to treat and to understand disease.
So, of course, why would we need diversity in trials? It's obviously very clear to me and you, but can you explain to others why it's necessary? You know, I think a lot of people honestly thought a lot of these drugs came from testing on rabbits and rats. And so they're like, wait a minute, using humans and, you know, our history. So why do we need to be involved?
Yeah, great question. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, fundamentally, human beings are not rabbits or mice or rats. And fundamentally, populations of humans sometimes respond differently to different drugs. That can be sometimes because of genetic backgrounds or differences in one population versus another from a genetic perspective. But often it's also the social environments and the different drivers that one population may be faced with versus another one. And therefore, the response to the therapies and the response to drugs can differ from populations. And frankly, sometimes we can't even tease apart how much of that is driven by genetics and how much of that is driven by, let's call them, environmental factors.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's critical as we do this experimentation, which is a word I use with some hesitancy.
Right.
Do this evaluation of new products and new services. We think very carefully that we need to make sure that we thought about all potential populations that will benefit downstream from that therapeutic. We want to make sure they're included in that process of evaluating the safety and the efficacy of each of those products or drugs, diagnostics or treatment strategies. So that's the first reason, is that there is some difference in the way that populations may respond to a given therapeutic. And there's a second important component, which is that clinical research care is a component of the best care that we have to provide to patients. In a sense, it's an opportunity for us to reach through to the future a bit and pull through some of the most cutting edge therapies that are available for the treatment of patients with complicated disease. So I think there are two distinct drivers. One, to make sure that there is an inclusion of a variety of populations so we don't end up running into a situation where a drug impacts one population differently from another. And secondarily, that it's a form of the best forms of clinical care that we have to provide to all patients.
So, Ricky, as somebody who I'm sure you've participated in clinical trials, correct? Yes. So,
Yes.
so have I. So as someone who's participated in them, can you talk about what he's talking about with the best clinical research, the care that you get?
Yeah, can I go back for a second?
Yes, go ahead.
Because I think breast cancer is the perfect example of why patients should participate in trials. But we did a research study about 3 years ago just to understand what the fears were among women and why they weren't participating. And the biggest fear, well, the biggest issue, frankly, was doctors don't invite them. But when you sort of get over that barrier, the other fear was, I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't want to get the sugar pill and die. And so when you explain it the way you so eloquently explained it, Dr. Pierre, that it's like Advil. You took it last week and it was in a clinical trial. Like the heart medicine I give my dog Harper was in a clinical trial. And when you explain what standard of care is in simple words that patients can spell, they'll sign me up. I want to do it. And so you take the fear away. So basically, just explaining that you're going to get something in cancer research, there is no sugar pill. You're going to get a drug. Now, it may not be the best drug, but it's going to be a drug that's on the market and is being used currently, or something on top of it, or something totally different. And when you explain that from the voice of a voice of trust, people get it and want to sign up. So I want to make sure that people understand that it's really, you're going to get something. You're not going to be hung out to dry. And to what Dr. Pierre also said, you're going to get the best care you can get because more people are going to be poking you and prodding. You're going to have more people looking at you and checking you out. You're going to get more scans. If you were to start a chemo regimen today, you probably wouldn't get a scan for 3 months to know whether the drug was working or not. If you're in a clinical trial, you're probably going to be scanned in a month, and somebody's going to be just watching you, every step of the way to make sure that your disease isn't progressing, that the drug is working for you, and can monitor you. So all those factors, I think, make it more amenable to participate, and you're just going to get really, really good care. We actually look back in history to look at the drugs that were made for breast cancer. Most of the standard of care drugs, adriamycin, Taxotere, carboplatin, all the drugs that we all take, and there were no Black women in those trials. And so, like 20 and 30 years ago, there were no Black women in those trials, and so that's why we're now where we are, where we have a 41% higher mortality rate of breast cancer mortality than white women. Black women are getting breast cancer at twice the rate, dying at 3 times the rate under the age of 35. And the statistics for Black women in breast cancer are horrible. And now we have this growing body of data that's validating that the drugs aren't working for us. And we need better drugs. We need drugs that were tested on our bodies. And the only way we're going to change these devastating mortality rates is to really, participate in this drug research so that they work on our bodies. So it's so critical that we are open-minded to it, and we're going to get the best care. You're going to get the drugs of tomorrow, today, and a lot better care. So it's so important to do that and participate. I basically took drugs that were experimental for triple-negative breast cancer 12 years ago, and I didn't die. My doctor gave me 2 years to live. The first set of drugs didn't work for me. My cancer came back, and then I took some experimental drugs, and here I am 12 years later. So.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that people, your doctor only has that little window to see you. You might get 15 minutes. If you're lucky, you get 20, and that's it. And then you have to wait till whatever, if it's a 6 months you go or once a year, whatever. So when you do a clinical trial, though, they're on you and they are contacting you. The nurses are contacting you, and they are, with you every step of the way. You're getting extra attention. And you're not paying for the medication. And you might even get compensated for your time, your travel, and all these other reasons that, this is beneficial. Now, what is Genentech Roche doing towards increasing their diversity in clinical trials? And I know all three of you have something to do with that.
Well, I get to defer that to Dr. Theodore, maybe to talk a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, no, this is my favorite topic to jump in on. So I'm happy to discuss our role and our activities at Roche and Genentech in order to address the issue of diversity in clinical trials. And I would say before diving into the tactics, it's just to state up front that what's really critical is that we create trustworthy, reliable systems where patients recognize that they are being put first and they are being cared for through the clinical trial. So, what's critical to us is A, to identify clinical trial sites that have demonstrated expertise in reaching Black patients, in reaching Hispanic patients, in reaching traditionally underserved patients, where we can learn lessons from their capacity to understand in culturally sensitive and appropriate ways and to communicate effectively with the patient. So first we start by identifying clinical trial sites, and maybe Ricky can go into a little bit more detail what that means to be a clinical trial site. And once we've identified those sites, we create a community of practice where we are generating lessons that are shared with physicians and with patients alike so that we can increase the familiarity and the understanding of clinical trials among the patients and providers alike, again, to ensure trust among the patient population. So the first act that we've put in place is creating these alliances of clinical trial sites that are focused on traditionally underserved populations. And a second absolutely critical effort is to partner with organizations just like Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, that allow us essentially to work through trusted voices to connect to the patients so that the information that the patients are receiving is not solely coming from a manufacturer or from a drug company, but are coming from patients that have a lived experience that means so much to the patient. So I would say to start the conversation, we sort of work on both the provider side by unifying clinical trial sites that can specifically address the needs of traditionally underserved patients, and then partnerships with advocacy groups that allow us to really attend to the needs of individual patients are two of the principal ways that Roche and Genentech are trying to address diversity in clinical trials.
And just
Can
to
I-
add in, oh, go ahead, Ricky.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to say.
Just to add into what Dr. Theodore just said, so the program that I run for Genentech and Roche is called a Trial Information Support Line, and we have nurses on the line, and it's a very unique program, unlike other companies. Again, the contact that we have normally up there is posted for every single trial that we have at Genentech and Roche, and there's always going to be a phone number, email, chat feature, even for BDO, whenever a patient has any questions. But what makes our program unique, again, support diversity, is through the years we have reached out and we hear from our patients. What can we do differently at that trial line to make sure patients, you feel safe to call us? We're not just going to call you and give you basic answers and hang up. What can we do to ensure that we hear your barriers through the years? We hear you have questions about transportation, about, hey, how can I commit to 50 clinics to our nurses? We could help you answer all that. How can I talk to one of the sites? We could help you talk to a site. Any questions that a patient have and their barriers, don't worry, ask us, and we will find an answer for you. Even if we don't find a trial within our company, we might help you navigate through the website and see something else that's outside of our company, because we're in it together and we want our patients to know that, hey, the program we set up at Genentech and Roche, we're there to support you. We hear everything that you need. And if you want to ask simple questions all the way to participate and go through eligibility, our nurses will walk you through the entire trial, and you don't have to worry about reading all the records or brochures. It's very hard for patients. And this is what we hear. If we have somebody to walk them through all the way, we're the front line and get the best experience, whether you enter in a trial, at least give you the first point of contact to our company and make you feel like, hey, you're important, your voice matter, and whatever we could do, we will make sure we will walk you through the entire process at our program. So I'll pass it on to you, Ricky.
I would add that Genentech has been my fairy godmother. From when I started Touch 4 years ago, and I first received, the innovation and research grant to do my research, to really understand what's in the patient's mind. And so that was a huge research study. We talked to 300 Black blessees to understand, where they were in their heads. Like, okay, how do we do this? And then when we got the data a year later, Jen said, okay, Ricky, what are you going to do now? I said, well, I want to launch a marketing campaign and I want to start a movement to educate Black women. And so that birthed When We Trial. And they supported me through birthing When We Trial, or When We Trial movement 2 years ago. And now we've been able to sign up 18,000 Black women into clinical trial portals. So they helped me build the website, build all the marketing materials. We produced a bunch of videos that are on our site if you go to whenwetrial.org. And that all was through the support of Genentech, supporting what we thought was the best way to approach Black women. And now we're actually doing kind of a microcosm of what Judy's doing. We launched last September a clinical trial program with a drug called Avera, where we actually helped develop the materials to recruit patients for the trial. We helped select the sites with the Genentech team. We worked with Dr. Vidal to help figure out how we're going to talk to patients. And then we built a nurse navigator program similar to what Judy's talking about, but specifically for Black women. And so we can reach out now, and we have a 24/7 hotline. Anybody can call us, but we designed it with specifically for Black women. And our navigator is a Black blessee. She's a 25-year survivor. She's a nurse navigator, so she has all the things, has seen all the things, knows all the stories, knows how to talk about everything, and she's available 24/7. So she spends a lot of time talking to the families, explaining the informed consent, that god awful document. And we actually help with the informed consent a little bit. We actually also coach the PIs. We work with 90 PIs that you guys have, and we coach them. We talk to them about every 2 months. We have a Zoom with them, and we coach them on how to talk to Black women. Simple things like, do you have a Black nurse in your office? Or how are you approaching women? What do they do who do they see when they come to your house? And we just help them understand how to talk to Black women specifically to make them feel comfortable, make them feel loved on, and give them the peace they need to be able to make this important decision. And then we coach their families. We explain the informed consent to their husbands, their mamas, their aunties, their grandmas. And then we give them a program called Unite for Her. So they basically get $2,000 worth of services once they join the trial to help them with non-medical integrative medical services. So food, Reiki, yoga, recipes, all kinds of support systems are in place for them. So, and that was all because of Genentech. They've been able to help us do this whole program, and we are so grateful, so grateful.
That is awesome. That is amazing and awesome. And I know that those women, I know that they I'm sure love it because it is catered to them. And
Yes.
It's so many times that we are forgotten and overlooked, and it's like, wait a minute. And we keep talking about this informed consent. Literally, the thing could be a stack of pages this thick. It is a lot because they need to tell you every little tiny detail to make sure that, basically they don't get sued. 1, 2, you need to know the information. If you sign up for something, you need to understand exactly what's going on. And because that paperwork is so thick, it is hard to understand what's going on just from reading it or looking at it. So it's great that you have Judy and you have Ricky's services so that you can get that information from, I think it's better to talk to someone and sit down and look at them or listen to them on the phone to get the information rather than having to read it, because it is a lot of jargon, legalese and medicalese and stuff. So, I think that is awesome because I think that can be a huge deterrent to a lot of people in our community, just that alone. Like they might have been ready to go and then you handed them that stack of papers and they were like, oh, wait a minute, never mind. So,
Or they go home and show it to their families, and their families like, hold on, wait a minute. And we know that our research shows that when the patient even brings up the concept of a clinical trial to a doctor who hasn't brought it up to them, they still walk away feeling ill-informed.
Yeah.
They still walk away uncomfortable about explaining to and they can't defend themselves to their mamas and their husbands and whoever they got acquainted at home. And then they show them that document and like, no, we're not doing that, baby. You're gonna get the sugar pill and die. And so we know that education is so important. I really believe that health illiteracy, and my daughter hates when I say that word because it sounds like it's the patient's fault, but health illiteracy is breeding health inequity. It's breeding it because our patients just don't know. They just don't know. And Black people, we don't talk about health at home. we don't talk about health until Uncle Pookie gets his leg amputated.
Yep.
Or Grandma Edith is in hospice, right? And then we're in a crisis situation. And who knew what a clinical trial was until you need one and you're in a crisis, right? So it's so important that they feel educated in the right way, with the right words, with the right love around it. And that's what we do. And that's what When We Trial does, is puts the love around the science. So we give you a hug while we're explaining this 30-page document to you.
And Ricky, maybe I can build on that.
I just did a TEDx talk on health literacy. Hilarious that you just said that. Literally 2 weeks ago. Go ahead.
I have to watch that.
Yeah.
Dr. Renee.
Absolutely. We should all watch that. And Dr. Renee and Ricky, I'd like to maybe build on your comments about the informed consent, because it's such an important point. But I also want to make sure that the listeners recognize the fact that the informed consent is not a one-way discussion. The idea is not to sort of push the information to the patient and then take a sort of a sit-back approach to decide whether or not the patient, determines if he or she wants to be part of the trial. The informed consent is that opportunity for the patient to ask every imaginable question that she may have about that trial. And if it's not clear, then it should be clear after that discussion with the provider, with the navigator. So in some ways, that multi-page document, as intimidating as it may be, is really the portal to make sure that the patient's questions are fully answered.
Yeah. And I think also that's why the navigator comes in so handy, because, and that's a lot of the coaching that we give to the PIs, Dr. Pierre. Do you have someone in your office who can sit down with the patient and explain this? And if you don't, then you better call us, because we're here for you, because we can. And we can from a black Westies too. So I think that perspective just helps a lot. I mean, and you guys have all heard me say this, in my ideal world, I think a clinical trial should be in a beautiful Victorian house in a Black neighborhood, where you walk down the street, you open the wrought iron gate, you walk up on the porch, the beautiful Black grandmother gives you a hug, takes your 3 kids into the playroom, feeds them spaghetti, takes you into the treatment room, and puts you in a cushy chair, gives you a blanket that she crocheted, gives you a cup of tea with mint from her garden, turns on Luther Vandross, and gives you the shot. And so I know that's crazy, but that's the level of care that we need, because you know what? For patients, it's not about science. It's about another sunrise. It's about a birthday. It's about a grandbaby being born. It's about a college graduation. It's about a wedding. And that's what we're thinking about. We're not thinking about what's on page 32 of the informed consent.
Correct.
We're thinking, can I make it to my kid's graduation? Can I see my grandbabies being born? And that's what we're thinking about. And that's how we talk about it to patients. So we give them the science with this love around it, because for us, it's all about love and life and another day.
I used to encourage patients early in my career as a coordinator. I started as a coordinator. I remember even back then that, consent was so, like you said, Dr. Renee, it's so thick that most patients just say, I'll sign. But again, be empowered when you're in a clinical setting. Ask the coordinator the question. Don't just skim through it. If there's anything on your mind, if they don't have a navigator, which a lot of sites don't. But again, the coordinator's role is to answer any questions for the patient, to make sure that you guys feel comfortable as a patient, and not just go, I'll sign, I'm in. Hey, don't be afraid. They should be there to answer the questions. If you don't get what you want, you could call our trial line and we will escalate and get you an answer. But again, that's what I noticed too, is it's, again, empowering our patients, ask the right questions. And at our program at the trial line, just, the fully trained nurses on the line, similar to what you mentioned, Ricky. And for us is also being able to also help different types of patients that call in. And most of our patients that call in, typical questions sometimes be the first time they're calling, they're nervous, and they're like, I don't know why I'm calling. Someone in my family, my physician, just say, call the company. They say, here's a trial, you might ask about it. And they have no idea. And they just want to know sometimes,
they have no idea.
What is this? Can you just start by telling me, what is a trial? Why do I want to be in it? And that's the first step, right? Just go ahead and call and we will guide you, right? But these are very typical questions. Or we could get a typical question from patients. Hey, I have no time. I'm in stage 4. My doctor told me to call. I want to be in a trial immediately. Send me to a trial, get me eligible. How do I get there? And those are some And so we
Right.
get-
Or save my mother, save my
Yeah,
kids.
well, we get that. Or say my
Right.
children,
Save my
save my
children,
children.
save my husband, save my wife. You know,
Yeah.
we get the calls from the husbands and the mamas a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I
We
mean?
get a lot
How
of
can you save-
caretakers too.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
caregivers just saying, how do we do this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ricky, you mentioned something I wanted to touch on, which was your sort of Victorian mansion utopia that you just described, which is a very powerful image.
I
But
love
it reminded me to think that it's also important for the participants in clinical trials to ask the provider or the clinical trial coordinators or the navigator about the sites of care, as
Yeah.
increasingly clinical trials are becoming both decentralized and often portions of that care can
Yeah.
actually be delivered in the home as well.
In your house, in your own
So
house.
it's very important that each participant really asks, does this mean I'll be coming into the hospital more? Will people be coming to the home? Who will that be? To really understand the sites of care. We may not quite get to the beautiful image that you described, but it's an important part of understanding a clinical trial.
Yeah, and
anything.
even being able to do something at home, you know, even a lot of the medications you take at home, you don't have to go for an infusion. And so you could have some telemedicine visits as well. But even there, you know, I always say, you know, basically just ask people to be treated like they want to be treated. You know, treat people like you want to be treated. And that's what we tell our patients to demand from their doctors, to demand from their PIs. How would you feel if this were your mother? How would you treat this person differently if you were your daughter? And so that's what we teach our patients to ask for. And it's funny, we have one, blessed, she's passed now, but she used to say, I want the Ruth Chris dinner appointment. I don't want the McDonald's drive-through appointment. I want the appetizer, the cocktail, the main course, the dessert, all the things. I want that much time. Take your hand off the door, doctor. And I don't want that, you know, and that's what we teach patients, you know,
Yeah.
ask for the care, ask for the time that you deserve. But that's why, you know, and if they're not giving it to you. So we just made a video. So basically, if the PI doctor doesn't have time to explain a trial to a patient, we made a video that will be on a QR code. So basically the doctor can say, here, click here. And then you get a video of Val, our navigator, and I talking and explaining the trial to them. Here's what the trial's all about. Here's what you have to do. So if the doctor doesn't want to do the job or doesn't have time, whatever, we're there for them with this video. And so they can see us and hear us talking and giving them love while they're waiting for the next thing to happen in the office.
And for us at the trial line too, I think I spoke earlier about barriers. Let us know, patients, what are your barriers? Don't be afraid,
Yes.
let us know. Let us see what we can do when you tell
To
us
help
those
you.
barriers. Through the
Yeah.
years, I hear, I can't get to 50 appointments. There's no way. I work. I don't
Right.
have a babysitter. Whatever it is, tell me. Tell our nurses. We will reach
Right.
out to the study team. We'll reach out to the sites. We will figure this out together. Those are
Right.
just barriers. Should not ever interrupt you if you want to participate in a trial that could help you. Give us a call, email us. We will make sure we respond. Maybe the trial's not open, but guess what? We will call
Yeah.
you. Site opens near you or if the study opens near you, we will keep you on a log and we will call you and provide you that information. So again,
Yes.
don't be afraid to kind of ask those questions as a patient, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a patient, Michelle, and I did a presentation with her the other night, and she was talking about she has 2 kids, 7 and 14, and they're very active athletes, and you know all the things, right? And she said, you know, I work my trial schedule, my infusion schedule around my kids, and I take my kids' calendar to the doctor and say, this is when I can come,
Yeah.
and this is when I can't come,
Yeah.
and they work out a schedule together because she's not going to sacrifice her job as a mama for her care, and they work it out. And that's what we help
Yeah.
you do. Like, you know, we can help you do that, and we can help you. Basically, we're just giving you like the balls you need to talk to your doctor. A lot of times, okay, go back and ask for this. It's okay.
Right.
Correct.
You
And
know?
for our elderly patients too, there's many times I
Yeah.
hear, they're
Yeah.
like, even if we go to a trial site, I have no idea even where to enter in this big giant hospital, whatever. You know
Right.
what? Let me solve that for you. I will
Yes.
work with the coordinator to come out and find you and escort you in. I'll get the driver or the Uber driver,
Right.
whoever it is, they will walk you in. You do not have to worry. And walking you
Right.
out to make sure you're safe, or nurses who help you,
Right.
guide you through
Walk in.
wherever you need to go. Those are just simple things. Again, those are simple barriers, but to a patient, they're big. Like, hey, I'm in a wheelchair, or even as simple as I have a family of 5 that needs to come with me to support me. I have a wheelchair. I need a big van. let us solve that. We will figure it out together, you know?
But you know what, Judy? So many patients are used to going to a community hospital. And so their normal is to go into like Cook County Hospital in Chicago, Grady Hospital in Atlanta, you know, DC hospital in DC, like, and they're used to like waiting for care,
Right.
having a different supply doctor every time, not getting the best service, right? Because they're all overworked and underpaid. So when they go to a Georgetown or University of Chicago, where it's this big daunting hospital and nobody looks like them, they're overwhelmed and intimidated, and that makes it even harder to ask for things because they're not used to asking for what's not their normal. If their normal is not to be taken care of in that kind of way, then that's what they think, right? So you have to really convince them that this is different, and we're going to care for you and love on you and bring you the care that you need, that you deserve, right?
Yeah, everyone is involved when it comes to clinical trial,
Yes.
all the way to the frontline trial nurses, all the way down to the site, the PI, the medical monitor. I mean, everything. We're watching and we're making sure that the patient is okay. Like they won't be waiting for hours. And you have an appointment, you're going to be seen, and whatever you need, we'll make sure that you're in a comfortable setting. So,
but if you're not used to that,
yeah,
from your normal chemo, you're not going to even know to ask for it.
correct.
Right. So you can expect it.
Yeah, we follow up. Even our nurses on the front line will follow up, maybe a week later, 2 weeks later. Hey, how was the appointment? Anything we could do? Can we do more searches for you? Did the coordinator respond back? Did you get your appointment? Or what else do you need from our nurses to make sure that we need to communicate with the site for you? We do kind of all those follow-ups in a clinical trial setting too.
Yeah, and we do the same. We also try to find you resources in your community. So if you are in a site that's different and you need help, you want to find a yoga class, you want to find the local Whole Foods. I told you one of my grandchildren would show up during this recording. This is Belle. So this is the oldest one. Say hi.
Oh, super cute.
But I knew what I tell you. I told these guys before we started that I can't control whether who's going to come in the room. Yeah, I can't talk right now. They're in the freezer. They're looking for the Klondike bars. They're in the freezer that we hid from their mother. You don't say no when you're a grandma.
Right. Pierre, can you talk to the fact that you don't have to wait until you're sick to participate in this?
Right.
Oh, that's a very important point. It's a really critical point, is that often in some of the, and this, to step back, we should note that you'll sometimes hear the term of the phases of clinical trials. Right. And it's probably worth just discussing in very broad terms what those phases mean. Early on, drugs and medical devices are often tested on, as you mentioned earlier, mice, for example, to work out some of the safety and dosing issues before they advance into what we call the early stages or a phase 1 clinical trial, where often we're just trying to understand the appropriate dosing for a clinical trial before it advances on to patients that truly have the disease that we're trying to treat. There's some differences across cancer trials and non-oncology trials, but the most important that I'm trying to stress here is that in early clinical trials, often even patients that are healthy and have no disease at all can be included into the clinical trials as well. And it's, again, part of that process of understanding the safety and efficacy of the drugs and treatment. I think most of what we're talking about today is the advanced phases of clinical trials when people have a disease process. And this is a form of the advanced care that is available for patients. But you make a great point, Dr. Renee, that in the early phases of clinical trials, often patients don't have the disease at all, and even normal healthy volunteers are an important part of clinical research.
Yeah, I participated in a fibroid study. I do not have fibroids, but I participated in they were trying to do research to figure out, where they came from, how they came. So they had people that had them and people that did not. But then I participated in asthma clinical trials, and I do have severe asthma. And at the time I was taking a drug, and they were like, well, we're going to give you either that drug or something different. And, obviously this is something I had to consent to. And I said, okay, well, and I didn't get sick, so I don't know what I had. I was okay. But yeah, so it's just important that you know that you don't have to wait until to do a clinical trial. You could
Yeah.
participate while you're healthy and help them to develop drugs or develop, in research to figure out things that might help somebody else.
It's really
Yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
even to add one more element, sometimes trials can be grouped into what we call interventional trials, in which a patient receives some sort of a therapy, and then non-interventional trials, which are often trials where we observe and we ask patients about their experience with a drug. We ask patients about barriers that they are encountering. So the umbrella of clinical trials is quite broad. And sometimes it really involves not even a specific therapeutic intervention. So again, going back to, I think, Judy's comment and Ricky's comment, really digging into those consent forms so that there's a mutually shared clarity about the purpose of the trial and the goals and the outcomes of the trials that are anticipated is critical.
Yeah,
And-
I've probably been in about 5 trials, and I live in the DC area, so I'm on the list for Georgetown. They sign me up whenever you have a trial for me, call me. And so I've done 2 different trials measuring the stress in my life as a survivor. I've done a trial where I wore a bracelet for 3 weeks to measure the chemicals going on in my body, the chemicals in my environment. I've done like a mental health trial for the impact of cancer on my mental health. And I encourage everybody, but I really encourage Black women to participate in this science, because we don't have enough data about Black people, and we need
Yes.
more data, whatever the issue is, whatever the concept is. We just all need to do it. And and just to learn more and to have a database, like even just even the BDO event the other day, Dr. Renee, we're talking about genomic databases. We just don't have data, right? We don't have data for Black women and Black people. So the more we can participate, the healthier we'll ultimately be. We just need more info on us, on our
And
bodies.
actually, blackdoctor.org has a clinical trials tab right there on the website, and you can look and see what clinical trials that you qualify for, you think you may qualify for, and apply and just see what happens. So you don't even have to leave your home. You can do it right there from your computer or your phone and just see. Because not everyone, because I will tell you, the asthma ones that I participate in just happen to fall in my Facebook feed. And that's how I found out about them. And once I got plugged into University of Chicago, then they consistently kept calling me.
Right, same with me. Yeah, same with
Yeah, but but the original was because it popped up in my Facebook feed. But blackdoctor.org has clinical trials that they participate with, helping the different sites to find people. And so you can try and participate. Just go to their website. Clinical trials is a tab right at the top, and just see. You never know. And then you could call Judy's line and you could find out maybe there's some other trials that are available that you didn't see anywhere else. And you talk to them and they figure out, oh, well, this is, you probably might be able to participate in this one over here or this over here. So, there's just so many ways to get the information. There's so many people trying to help us to get these numbers up, because I know Pierre probably knows, as a cardiothoracic doctor, that there's a blood pressure medication that somehow got on the market that does not work well for Black people.
That's
And-
across the board. That's across
Right.
the board for all medications.
Right.
We actually have a breast cancer portal too on our site, when we trial.org, Dr. Renee. And so we actually had it built for us so that we can track you to help you match a trial. And if you get stuck, we have an 800 number in the portal where someone will come and help you kind of go through it, because clinicaltrials.gov is a horrible, god awful place.
Oh gosh, yes. And I just want to chime in.
we need
BDO
to
has
build
done
it.
BDO has done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And right now on BDO, if you go on the website, there are 20 Genentech Roche trials up there that we are collaborating with BDO. But underneath, as Dr. Renee said, there is a little contact us, because we want to make it easy. If the record is too overwhelming, contact us. You can chat
You
us.
can call, you can email, you can chat.
You can
Call. The
same with
nurses
ours.
are right there.
Yeah.
And also outside of that 20, keep in mind, for Genentech and Roche, we have hundreds of other studies, including healthy volunteers. So don't limit yourself to just those 20. You guys could call us anytime and say, hey, how about this indication? And we'll look. and we'll look outside of our company, let
Yeah.
them know, hey, here's what we found for you. And again, so don't limit yourself. Call. There's hundreds of studies that we comb through. And I agree with you, Ricky. Clinicaltrials.gov, from the feedback we've gotten from patients last years now, it's really, really
It's
difficult
horrible. It's
to
horrible.
look through trials. And it's patients are literally telling me, Judy, don't send me to that black hole of
Right. Right. It's
clinicaltrials.gov.
like going to
So
hell.
in our
hell
company, we
twice.
have now,
Yeah.
again, developed on our Genentech, we have a trial finder in lay's term for patients. Taking the information on clinicaltrials.gov and putting the lay's term for patients and HCPs to understand, again, with our nurse's number. You don't want to read it, we could read it to you, explain the criteria to you. So.
And if you guys notice, there is a ticker with website for clinical trial information. So please make sure you get that information. If you are very interested, I hope you'll visit blackdoctor.org or visit this website. Visit Ricky's website if you are blessed. Yours are just breast cancer stuff, right?
Yes, breast cancer trials, but
Yes.
also behavioral trials that relative to breast health. Yeah.
Okay.
Whenwetrial.org. Whenwetrial.org.
Whenwetrial.org. So, there's all these different places and ways. And, unfortunately, like she said, breast cancer is affecting women younger and younger and younger. So this is information you want to make sure that you get to, your high school daughters and nieces
Yes.
and goddaughters and all of that, because unfortunately, I had talked to a breast surgeon here who said she diagnosed somebody who was like 24.
Oh, we have two 24-year-olds right now that we're working with, but our director of our HBCU internship program, she had triple negative at 19, again at 21. She's 25 now, getting ready to go to med school, but she runs our internship program. But yeah, young women are getting triple negative breast cancer in incredible numbers. And I'm not a doctor; I just play when I'm Facebook with you guys. but if you're a Black woman under 35, a clinical trial is your best science. It's the best science we can give your body. And these young women, because the drugs just aren't working for these babies. And it's horrific. Black women between the ages of 20 and 29 have a 58% more higher mortality rate than white women. It's crazy. The numbers are just horrific.
And it's breast cancer, and then prostate cancer numbers are skewed for Black people as well. Colon cancer. There's a lot. So if you can please try to participate in these trials so that we can get the information. Like she said, the Genomic Project is huge because we need to know all of what's going on with us. And if we don't have it recorded anywhere, then I don't know how we're going to do research to figure out what's the next best thing.
What works?
Yeah.
I think what you're also hearing as a take-home message for the listeners is that, often in general illness and certainly advanced illness can create a sense of isolation and loneliness and difficulty in finding solid information to rely on. And I hope one of the themes that we're trying to bring across here is we don't want any patient to be isolated and alone.
Mm-mm.
And one of the ways that we do this is by creating this community around clinical research. And we want to stress this idea, and what Judy brings to this field is so important, is that it is just that. It is the compassionate use support of our patients. And this is what we want to stress, that part of the elements of clinical research is supporting the patients and taking away that sense of being isolated by the illness.
Yeah.
No one fights alone. No one fights this fight alone. And you know what? Cancer is a family disease. It just doesn't affect the person with the bad cells. It affects everybody in the house, and everybody, the family is really a village. And so that's why the nurse navigation is so important, Judy, because you're really nurturing not only the patient, but the mama and the husband and the kids, and everybody's involved in this disease, and we're all a part of it. So,
and there's so much resources out there that folks don't know. Patients just not aware of it. They're afraid to ask the questions.
Yeah,
and
just have to ask.
Like you said, we all come together on this. Cancer does not discriminate, for sure. The number of cases here at the line, it's children down to our moms or aunts, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Even just getting into program, so I have two daughters. My younger daughter is my boss. She's my boss at Touch. My older daughter, though, is the one with the babies. And she just had a prophylactic mastectomy at age 38 because because, and I don't have any genetic mutations, but we have 3 generations of breast cancer on one side and colon cancer on my dad's side. And so because we don't know, we don't have data for Black women, just a family history is almost as bad as having a genetic mutation. And so
Right.
we didn't want to take the risk, right? And I think even that's a clinical trial in a lot of ways. I mean, anytime we do anything to our bodies, when you take a chemo drug, it's a clinical trial in your body because you've never taken it before. And so all of this data that we're building is so important. And being able to even have the resources to have the wherewithal to have a mastectomy at 38, without being sick, is all we need. All of this information for our community. And I didn't realize what an emotional weight cancer was on me, Amanda, and our family until Amanda had the surgery. And now it's like a weight was taken off of us. So even to be able to make decisions like this, it's all in talking and having nurse navigators to talk to and having a community around you to support you and having a resource like BDO to get information. So it's so important to have, and I wish we learned about clinical trials in high school in biology class.
Yeah.
And not when you're in a crisis.
Exactly.
Right? You have to make a decision today because you're metastatic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Pierre, do you have any last words for us? We're running out of time.
Sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, first of all, I'm just in awe of the information that's been shared here by Ricky and Judy and Dr. Renee. Really, I think gives patients a real sense of how clinical research can empower them on the complicated journey that often patients go through with all sorts of advanced disease, including oncology. And I think there's 2 concepts I'd like to leave the listeners with. The first is that we have a motto at Roche is that we are doing now what the patients need next. We are engaged right now in clinical research that allows us to, as I said earlier, reach into the future. And we really encourage patients to be part of that process of understanding disease, of making a sort of the possibility for more cures. And as I think Ricky had suggested, families like her to have the sort of data that will allow them to make the best possible decisions for themselves in the future. So thinking about being part of the future state of what medicine can represent. And the second is that it is a version of the best care that we have to offer to the patients that comes through clinical research. And you've heard of the attentive nature of care. Ultimately, what comes down to generating trust in our patients. And I would say to the listeners that is something that you should feel in the interaction with the coordinators and with the navigators and with partners like Ricky's organization, building that sense that you are being cared for and that there is reason to have trust in a system that will take your care quite seriously. And we are just quite honored by all the patients that participate in this process of clinical research and clinical trials.
Thank you so much. Judy, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Well said, and just so honored to be here to speak with all the patients out there and again, be empowered. Please let us help you. We're here to help you. So yeah, well said, everybody.
Thank you. And Ricky?
I would just say, what I tell every woman I encounter, ask for the golden rule treatment. Ask for the doctor to treat you like you want to be treated, like he wants to be treated or she wants to be treated. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, and don't feel like you're alone. As Dr. Pierre so eloquently said, you have a village around you. Work it, use it. We're all here for you, and that's what we do all day. This is my God job. So reach out to us. You can reach out on our if you go to our website and sign up, we'll call you or reach out. And I think it's so important to know that this is something we should talk about. We should talk about with our families and learn about it before you need one. Talk about the science and talk about how it's something that we all have to participate on to live. And, it's a good thing. I think we have to really just learn to educate ourselves and know that we have options. We have, no is never the answer. It's always how can we help you? And we're here for that.
And my last thing is, please have those discussions and find out your family medical history.
Yes.
It is not okay to say so-and-so died and no one knows what happened. No, we need to know exactly what happened, because you don't know what is in your genes or what you need to look out for, because it's in your family line. Like she said, it's not a genetic thing with breast cancer, but they do know that they've had all these family members with it. Well, if you know that you've had 3 members of your family with blood clots, well, then you need to be careful that you don't end up having a clot and dying yourself. So
Right.
please make sure you have those discussions, because then you guys could say, oh, well, we talked to the doctor and there's a clinical trial on blood clots. We should participate.
Right.
So please have these discussions and make sure you talk about it. We often say a Black doctor, do it at the family dinner. So I guess the next big one would be Memorial Day. But have these discussions and don't be afraid to talk about it. And secrets really do not help anyone in any families at all, especially when it comes to health. So we really need to have these discussions. We need to talk and figure out what happened and what's going on, because if you don't talk about it and you don't know that your aunt has been fighting with the same thing, that's silly.
Yeah, the secrets we're keeping are killing us.
That's your community right there.
Yeah. The secrets we're keeping are killing us. They have to
Yeah.
stop.
So we have to have discussions in the Black community. We have to have discussions about our health, because that's how storytelling can help with health literacy. That's how we become knowledgeable and informed. So those of you that watch this tonight, now you know about clinical trials, and now you can spread that message and talk to other people in your community and your family. And hopefully we can get our numbers up so that we can, find out what will treat triple negative breast cancer, so that we can get our mortality rates down, and what can treat all these other diseases that Genentech is doing clinical trials for. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Genentech.